where autonomous animation becomes, has so much utility, in the metaverse is when it comes to you go into a retail store, a metaverse experiential store. And when we go into a store or we go into a particular world, part of the experience has been, not just wandering around and looking at clothes or cars or whatever we were looking at. Part of that experience is the human interaction part of it. How we interact with others, and that's where we see this concept of autonomous animation. This concept of a digital workforce becoming, as important in the 2D world as it is in the 3D world.
Synthesia.
Greg is the CEO and co-founder of Soul Machines and a real innovator in the space. Greg, thanks for joining me.
Hey, great to see you, Brett. Great to be here.
Well, super to have you. You have a ton of momentum. You've done some of the most innovative things in the industry. In fact, I rolled a little video earlier today in this very conference of one of your examples, because it was a perfect example of customer interaction and with a virtual human. But I think I'm just going to let you take it away, because I know you've got a story to tell, and then we'll chat a little bit afterwards.
So I'm Greg, I'm CEO and one of the co-founders of Soul Machines. And I wanted to start today talking about, a theme that I guess goes back a few years ago. We used to spend a lot of time thinking about the robots and the fact that they're coming. So we roll back to 2019, and this was a period where we all spent, as people in this industry of avatars, robots, artificial intelligence, we were spending so much time thinking about and talking about and positioning ourselves for this new era, which we knew as the fourth industrial revolution. And literally every conference you went to, these were the key topics. And then COVID came along, and Maslow's hierarchy kicked in, and we had a whole bunch of different needs that we had to go focus on. But it didn't go away. It didn't stop. We stopped talking about it, of course. And something I think about a lot is the fact that we're not in. COVID happened, and our whole digital life accelerated. Where we got our healthcare, where our kids were getting educated. All of a sudden, we had this dramatic digital acceleration, and so we're actually not in 2022 anymore. We're actually in something around 2025 is kind of my theory. And I was absolutely fascinated. Just earlier this week, I was reading an article in the Financial Times, and we've gone from an era where we were actually paranoid about the fact that the robots were going to come and steal our jobs, and they were going to rule over us, and we were all going to need to move to Mars, in order to avoid the killer robots. And now, in this world we live in now, where we have the Great Resignation going on, and people making different decisions about how they spend their lives and, how much work they do in their lives, we're starting to have conversations about, can the robots come fast enough? We need more robots. So it's a really, really interesting, time and a really interesting period of context. So, let me know how this video goes. So I want to, really start off by just introducing to you one of our avatars, one of our digital people. This, some of you will know who this is. This is some work we're doing with creating digital twins of real live celebrities. So this is Carmelo Anthony, the NBA All-Star.
Hi, I'm Digital Mello. I've been created in partnership with the team at Soul Machines to digitally amplify the work that the real Carmelo Anthony is so passionate about. I've read his memoir, Where Tomorrows Aren't Promised, and I've learned a lot about the real Carmelo. I learned about his upbringing in West Baltimore, his older brothers, the dudes on the block, and the community that looked after him and helped him see the bigger picture, making him the man he is today.
So I'm just going to pause Carmelo there. So, this is an example of the work that we do. And, there's two types of work that we do. And this is, clearly in the field of entertainment, where we can create hyper-realistic CGI characters, avatars, digital twins of real-life celebrities, in terms of the way they look, the way they sound, the personality, the way they behave, and the way they interact with us. And we think of this very, very much about the future of fan engagement. We all have our own heroes in our lives. We all have legends in our lives. And generally we access them via a platform, some form of media platform, whether it's, in the case of Carmelo, I mean, we access Carmelo via the NBA and we get to experience him through the TV rights, that have been sold to, to the broadcasting networks, or it might be a Hollywood actor or actress who we get to experience through the movies and the production companies that they produce content for. So, but imagine a world in the future where we as fans, can interact and engage directly with our heroes and with our legends, via a platform like this. So I mean, literally, you could have a one-on-one interaction with Carmelo Anthony, or Jack Nicklaus, and another great that we work with. We've got a project that we're just kicking off. We've got a couple of really interesting projects at the moment. Mark Twain, the big K-pop star, and then reimagining Marilyn Monroe for the 21st century. So this is an example of how we think about the future of fan experience, the future of entertainment. So, as well as all of this change that's gone on our lives around us, we've also seen sort of over the last 12 months the metaverse, really burst into our world and into the conversation of today. So, and there's a lot of focus, when we think about the metaverse, there's a lot of focus on the digital worlds that we create and what those worlds will be like. But what we like to think of at Soul Machines is, how will we interact in those worlds? How will we really engage? And so we like to think about what we do as providing the heart and soul of that human interaction. So in today's 2D internet world, we're working with some of the biggest brands in the world, providing a whole range of digital people in a digital workforce that can augment what they need to do in real life. Now, and as Brett talked about, right at the outset, what we as a company do very, very differently. I mean, there's lots of avatars out there. There's lots of CGI characters. But whenever you see an avatar or a digital person, or a digital human, whatever name you like to use, there's two parts to it. How do you create that digital character? And then how do you bring it to life? And what's so cool about the work that we do is we've developed this platform. We've done this deep tech research that has been going on in our organization for over 10 years, which is what we call autonomous animation. So when we think about animation has been driven by the movie industry. It's been driven by the games industry. And this type of animation is human acted animation. It is pre-recorded animation. It tells great stories. It's really high quality animation. It's expensive, it can be very, very expensive animation. So this concept of autonomous animation is actually very similar to what I'm doing here today. I mean, Brett's, sitting on my screen in front of me and he's listening to what I say. And, so I'm being autonomously animated by my brain. My brain's bringing me to life, choosing my words, what I say, how I express them, and Brett's brain is reacting to what he hears. I mean, as yours will be doing for you as well. So it's this concept, this platform of autonomous animation, which takes us into a new paradigm of animation. It means we can create highly personal experiences 24/7 at scale, and we can do that for brands of all kinds, whether they're big enterprise brands, big consumer brands, the schools that our kids go to, the healthcare centers that we receive services from. I mean, these are just, this is just a whole range of applications. So literally a conversation with a digital person. And if you haven't had a conversation with them, go check out our website. You can go talk to Viola. Viola's pretty much connected to the internet. So, the questions she answers for you, I mean, you'll be responsible for the questions you ask. The content she provides, the answers she provides will be very much determined by the questions you ask. So, I mean, these are some of the things that we as a company, think about today. So as we roll forward into the future, we imagine a world, where we can democratize this technology and we can make it not available just to celebrities and big brands, but we want to create a world where we have creators, and I'm going to touch on this in a little bit, where we literally have hundreds of thousands of creators who can create digital people and digital avatars. You don't need to be a CGI artist anymore. You don't need to be a highly skilled animator to bring a digital character to life and to be able to think about ways in which it might be ways you might be able to create utility and applications which you as a creator can monetize in the real world or in the digital worlds around us. So we imagine a world where there are literally hundreds of thousands of digital creators, millions and millions of autonomously animated digital people. And they all live in different digital worlds. There's not going to be a single version of the metaverse in the world that we look at. We also think about the digital world as being seamless with the real world. So we see a world where thousands of digital celebrities will be able to literally interact with their fans on an ongoing basis, and NFTs, which are at the sort of digital art, digital video stage, actually move into these amazing digital experiences, which you access using these digital tickets and tokens. So, I mean, there is a journey that we're all on today, and I position it very much as a journey because I don't believe we don't believe it's a world of either the internet or the metaverse. I mean, or the real world. We believe these worlds should be connected, and you should be able to move through them and experience them and have human connection in this world in an incredibly seamless way. The digital people that we're deploying today on websites and in smartphone apps are going to be a big part of how we move seamlessly between the 2D world of the internet and the 3D world of the metaverse that we imagine and we're starting to create today. But there's also what I think about, we kind of call it the hybrid world. How might we want to experience our digital world in the real world? Walking into a real store and continuing a conversation that you were having in the metaverse with a holograph of a digital person, and bringing real people into those conversations. So, it's, how do we, I don't, we certainly don't see in our world of digital people and autonomous animation where we make decisions about living or existing in only one world. We really, really believe we'll continue to move seamlessly between these different worlds. So you can imagine, a world today where Viola is a shopping consultant on your smartphone, and in the future, you're wandering around a digital store and selecting items and trying them on with Viola. Healthcare is an area, where we just don't have enough doctors and nurses. We didn't have them before COVID. We certainly don't have them, in the world that we exist in today. So imagine how we can reinvent the way in which we deliver healthcare and healthcare assistance for the worlds we live in today and the worlds that we live in tomorrow. And one of the key approaches to democratizing how all of this works is a creative suite, which enables, anybody who wants to learn how to use it, the ability to create these incredibly realistic digital people, different genders, different ethnicities, different ages, different hairstyles, different makeup, different clothing. This is all configurable by our creators today. Attach it to conversational content, attach it to legacy databases, and deploy as a WebSocket. It becomes a world where it can be incredibly simple to start deploying a digital workforce that can make a real difference in what you do today. I'm going to just stop at that point, Brett, and see where you want to take this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so much to unpack here. And in this clip here, and I recommend everybody check out Soul Machines video channel on YouTube, because this is Jack Nicklaus talking about the fifth hole, and then actually will then transition into a conversation he's with the viewer about actually how to play golf, and he, like, gives some tips on golf skills in particular in terms of where you place your foot, or where you place your weight on your foot and loft. And it's really interesting how we do this. And that goes back to this idea of the digital brain. And I think this is really important for people to understand. There are different manifestations of synthetic media. Some of them are super lifelike looking avatars that don't have a brain behind them. The animation behind them, it might be a person, like it might be you or me as a player, and that avatar becomes us in a 3D space. But I think this is really interesting too, that you took the time to build that digital brain as well as the digital person so that you could animate it. And, I'm interested in your perspective on that in terms of how people are using these, because there are lots of people who are using them who are just avatars, right? Or script, or maybe they do recorded videos using scripts and that type of thing. But you actually took the harder path to make these interactive. And why did you take that position? Because I know you and your co-founder have been in this industry a long time.
Yeah. So I mean, my co-founder, Dr. Mark Sager, he comes from the world of movie animation, and was very, very highly regarded and widely recognized with Oscars for his work in movie animation. Mark imagined a world in the future where he wanted to be able to autonomously animate. He wanted to bring digital characters to life and make it so much easier for them to be useful in the real world. And so this is pretty serious deep tech research. If we think about the world of artificial intelligence, we think about deep tech research coming out of companies like DeepMind, got acquired by Google, now Alphabet, many years ago now. Some of the work that's going on at OpenAI at the moment, and a number of other deep tech AI labs around the world. What we've really become experts at, and it is this very, very specialist field of artificial intelligence, which often gets referred to as embodied cognition or cognitive modeling. So, so this research goes all the way back to 2012. It brings together so many different fields of scientific study. And we have neuroscientists on our team. We have developmental psychologists. If you want to understand some of the background to the deep tech research, there's a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel about Baby X, which was Mark's original research project. Because when you think of our digital brain and our neural pathways in our brain, so much of our learning and so much of shaping how our brains behave happens at a very, very young age. So that was really the experimental part of that technology. But then, and as you roll forward into the creating useful applications in the real world, you start to constrain the level of animation, because as human beings we have lots of different roles in life. Husband, boyfriend, parent, CEO. We all have different roles, and we adopt different behaviors, different modalities, different ways of communicating. We even often may use different languages when we're, or a different type of language, when we're having a beer in the pub with our mates versus, when I'm, doing when I'm doing a presentation to a conference like this. Of course, so I mean, a digital person is configured for a specific role, and so and has a brand to represent, and that has to be consistent with the brand personality, and that has to, it means messaging has to be delivered in a certain way. So these are some of the things that we think about as we start, as we focus on the commercial applications of what we do.
Well, when you just mentioned this idea of representing the brand, and we think then about brand consistency, in your presentation, you talked about us living in the 2D world and from a digital standpoint, and starting to move into the 3D world. I think it's very interesting that there's a lot of technologies now which will take you right to the 3D world. It'll create some sort of avatar for you, usually not animated, but sometimes. And And then there's this 2D world, and there seems like a gulf between them. So if I'm a brand or I'm a celebrity, you just mentioned that, Carmelo Anthony, I think I want consistency across those two spaces. So like, how do you enable that? And how do you think that's going to evolve?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it comes down, I mean, obviously, it's really early days for the metaverse in terms of the tech stack that we're all going to be part of contributing to and building to, because I mean, if you think of the 2D world, the internet world, I mean, it's what, I mean, there's people who tell you it's 50 years old today already, but I mean, in terms of, the way most of us think of it, it's over 20 years old. The device that democratized the internet, the smartphone, that came along in 2007. That's 10 years after the initial browser wars that happened. So, the metaverse is at a very, very early stage of its evolution and its development and its tech stack. So that's one thing to think about. The second thing to think about is the way in which we invest in creating content. Because once again, creating content for new digital platforms, it takes time. It's a long-term, ongoing investment, and the types of content that you can create and present and deliver, and how interesting and useful and compelling at it. I mean, as I say, I mean the e-commerce websites of today look nothing like the ones of the .com era 20 years ago. So there's so much has evolved. So I mean, these are some of the things that we think about as in terms of the evolution of digital people. I mean, creating the conversational content for digital people, that's an investment it's an investment organizations have to make. It's not a case of whether they will make it or not. It's not a case of if, it's really going to become a case of when. I mean, and it's going to be highly leverageable content because it is infinitely scalable. It is available 24/7. It is always on and always accurate and always up to date. And you compare that with, when we go and employ new people in real life. We have to train them, and companies invest millions and millions of dollars in training content, as an example, or, their e-commerce sites or their websites have had millions and millions of dollars of content and making them very, very sophisticated and informative and useful in terms of presenting information. So these are all areas that, we're going to have to figure out how we invest in. The way we think about it, or, we already build our digital people in full 3D. They have full bodies. They can, the autonomous animation systems that they have mean they can interact with content in the world around them. They can highlight, they can point. So, as human beings, a lot of the way in which we communicate is nonverbal. Because the efficiency in our communication systems comes through this concept of context, and context is very, very much set by the non-verbal side of communication. So these are all things that we think about and are building into the way in which our digital people will work today, and as we move into the future.
So there will be a link, although not everybody is heading towards a link because they're building in 2D or 3D mostly. But it sounds like in your vision, there will be a link, and I'm sure other people will try to follow that path as well. And you mentioned the metaverse. Maybe we'll close on this. We haven't really talked a lot today with the other speakers about the metaverse. We've been talking a lot about sort of our existing tech world, which you mentioned 2D, but you can just think about this as the internet era, pre-metaverse era. And we've been talking about synthetic media, just all of these new use cases. When you go into a metaverse, people will call it Web3, but we'll call it particularly a metaverse, virtual world environment. There's going to be that much more synthetic media. And I'm interested in a particular feature of those worlds, and that's these autonomous avatars. So we think about these autonomous digital people on websites right now, and that's great because we can interact with them. But when we're maybe in a crowd of them in a virtual world, it's going to be a very different experience. I'm just interested in your perspective and how you think that will develop, what percentage of population within these virtual worlds will actually be digital people versus real people, what they're going to do, how we're going to change our interpersonal interaction.
Yeah, and I think, and I think the other thing we'll discover is there will be, all sorts of different types of avatars, of course, all the different qualities of avatars as well. And, the animation will come in different shapes and sizes. So, one form of animation in the metaverse is what I'll call real-time animation, where, where Brett, you're standing in front of your camera, in your study at home, and you're bringing your avatar to life in real time. In other words, it's it's mimicking your gestures and having a virtual interaction with me in a metaverse room. So I mean, that's one form of animation. Another form of animation is, we're seeing a lot of interesting content and animation. There we go. There's a lot of interesting.
You can do it right now.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Another form of animation, will be pre-recorded animation. I mean, we're seeing a lot of concerts and being played in metaverse type worlds, but they're pre-recorded. I mean, and whether it's volumetric video or, I mean, in some cases it's just 2D content being broadcast into a 3D world. I mean, we're seeing all sorts of combinations of that type of content today, and that type of content will continue to exist in the future. Where autonomous animation becomes, has so much utility, in the metaverse, is when it comes to, you go into a retail store, a metaverse experiential store, and when we go into a store or we go into a particular world, part of the experience has been, not just wandering around and looking at clothes or cars or whatever we were looking at. Part of that experience is the human interaction part of it. How we interact with others, and that's where we see this concept of autonomous animation. This concept of a digital workforce becoming, as important in the 2D world as it is in the 3D world, and as we move backwards and forwards between those worlds. Because I mean, I'm certainly of the view that the internet is going to be an on-ramp for a lot of the 3D world for at least some time to come. So
and the internet 2D world isn't going away anytime soon.
I mean it's these devices have reached peak efficiency for us at this point in time.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Well, Greg Cross, this has been amazing. So people should check out your YouTube channel. So it's Soul Machines, and then soulmachines.com. And I recommend everybody go right after this event and have a chat with Viola.
Cool. Thanks, Brett.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
Synthedia.
Synthedia.substack.com. Synthetic media, virtual humans, voice clones, deepfakes, AI image and text generation, news and more.